Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Brian Kelly, the LSU Tigers kicking off spring practice, heading into the 2024 season early next week. I want to dive into some storylines and question marks that I'll be following for this LSU team as spring practice plays out. And this is a team that many of you guys know I am extremely excited for in 2024. There are elements of this roster that I think can do some really special things in that 2024 season. You look at the offensive line, one of, if not the best unit that we'll see in the country in 2024. Not many questions about Nussmeier and the talent that's going to be around him. That offense, I think, will be special once again in 2024. I think a lot of the questions you have is on the defensive side of the football. And I think there's two things to be optimistic about, right? One, you completely overhaul the defensive coaching staff, right? Bring in Blake Baker. You make a lot of nice assistant hires as well. But another thing to be excited about is you had a lot of young talent on that defense really have to be thrusted into action in 2023. And yes, there were some growing pains in 2023. I think that only helps the development of some of those young players heading into 2024. I think you mitigate some of those growing pains that you're going to see in 2024. Want to get into some of these position groups that I'm really keeping an eye on as LSU plays spring practice. Before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. And it truly has been a blast talking this LSU team, whether we're talking the coaching moves, the transfer portal, the high school recruiting class, the position deep dives. I've had a blast talking this program. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. The support means the absolute world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section as well. I learn a ton from you guys. The best part about doing this is really just talking football with you guys in the comment section. And without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to talk about, I think, the position group that I have the biggest concern for heading into 2024, and that is the inside of that defensive line. My eyes during spring practice are going to be on newcomer Sean Washington, coming from the JUCO ranks, was previously at the Georgia Bulldogs. If Sean Washington can come in and be a reliable body on the inside of that defensive line, that's going to mean massive things for this LSU team. Now, my biggest question mark for LSU on the inside is the depth, right? How many guys do we have that we trust on the inside of that defensive line? You get Dominic McKinley coming in the summer, a guy that as a true freshman, I think is going to play early and often for LSU. But outside of that, like, what are the guys stepping up? This is probably a position that you're going to see Brian Kelly address in the transfer portal. At the end of the day, when you're talking about 300-plus pound bodies, you can never have enough of them, right? You want to keep those guys fresh. You want to have a lot of depth in that unit. And right now, the depth is probably not where it needs to be. So this is a position that I'm looking at for guys stepping up, but more importantly, probably keeping my eyes on what Brian Kelly is doing in the transfer portal at this position. Next question I have, and I think one of the most exciting questions that you have for this LSU team heading into 2024, how are we going to use Harold Perkins? Now, the LSU fans who've been listening for the last couple of weeks know I was extremely critical of how Harold Perkins was utilized in that defense in 2023. You talk about being a good coordinator. I think it starts with utilizing the talent in the best ways possible, and that just did not happen in 2023, and I think it started with Harold Perkins. And I think Harold Perkins is a guy that I don't get paid enough money to utilize Harold Perkins the right way. I'm just talking into a microphone, but I think most LSU fans can watch that game and say, Harold Perkins was not given the opportunity to impact the college football games enough in 2023. And so how does Blake Baker come in and look at Harold Perkins and say, how do we get this guy to be utilized in the right way in 2024? My biggest critique is you arguably have one of the best pass rushers in the country in Harold Perkins, right? What he did as a true freshman, what he even did last year. Harold Perkins was on the field for 553 passing attempts, only rushed the passer 162 times. And this was a guy that was first in the team in sacks, second in the team in quarterback hurries. I look at Harold Perkins, I look at the most important thing you can do on the defensive side of the football, and that is impact the quarterback. I need to see Harold Perkins utilized more as a pass rusher, right? At the end of the day, you look at defense, and how I evaluate defenses, how well can you impact the passer? Harold Perkins is a chess piece that can really impact the passer. You got to let him go do that in 2024. And I think Blake Baker did a phenomenal job utilizing his talent at Missouri. I think he's going to utilize a guy like Harold Perkins in a very effective way in 2024. And you talk about this defense taking a step in that 2024 year. I think it starts with arguably one of the best defensive players in the country in Harold Perkins, letting him go kind of off the leash, I guess you'd say, and let him go impact this game. The next thing I want to talk about is this secondary puzzle. Now, we have a few additions in the transfer portal. They're not updated on this depth chart. The reason I call it a puzzle is you got a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. And I think a lot of college football fans, and maybe the casual college football fans who just take a peek at the box scores, kind of write off this LSU secondary as not going to be that good in 2024. One, I mean, Corey Raymond, Blake Baker coming in. I'm extremely excited about the development that's going to take place. But more importantly, you go back to that 2023 season, the amount of injuries that LSU had to endure in the back end was just about as bad as you'll see in the country. You were forced to play guys like Ashton Stamps, Javon Toviano, a lot more than I think LSU wanted to as true freshmen. Now, the positive of that is you're probably kind of stimulating that development heading into 2024. How I think this secondary room shakes out. You have Zy Alexander, who's the only guy in this LSU roster that's actually not going to be healthy for spring practice, which is massive, right? Having your guys healthy for spring install and practice is massive. Zy Alexander, not going to be available for spring practice, should be back by summer workouts, a guy that I think is going to be a starting corner for LSU. You have a guy like Ashton Stamps, who, I mean, as a three-star coming out of high school, played really well for LSU as a true freshman. It's probably the best true freshman that we saw LSU play on, well, maybe outside of Whit Weeks, on the defensive side of the football. Ashton Stamps, I think, can be a starting cornerback heading into year two. A couple other guys that I want to note, J.K. Johnson coming back from the broken leg. I was a huge fan of J.K. Johnson coming out of high school at Ohio State and was a massive fan of him coming over to LSU. We didn't get to see him healthy in that 2023 season. I think J.K. Johnson, at the very least, stimulates a lot of competition in that room. You bring in Jair Brown from Ohio State. And then the one I want to highlight is how do we use a guy like Toviano, who I think is a safety. I think you saw at corner. I don't know if he has that long speed to run with people down the field. And that could have just been some growing pains, right? His kind of feet stuck in the mud as a true freshman. He, I think, clearly was not ready to play as a true freshman. I think you had to kind of just thrust him into the fire because you just didn't have any other cornerbacks to play. I wonder if Toviano moves to that nickel role, to that safety role. I think Sage Ryan is a really, really good nickel. And then you look at the back end, a guy like Major Burns coming back. I think the biggest question that I have and the thing that I'm going to be looking at the most is, all right, you have all these guys that can do a lot of different things. How are they going to be utilized in that LSU defense? That's probably the question that I'm looking at. But you got a lot of names. And we kind of said this heading into 2023. It's a numbers game. There's a lot of talent in this room. Who's stepping up? Who's going to step up and make plays for this LSU defense in 2024 is the question. We said that going into 2023. And I mean, the numbers game kind of got diminished because most of those guys went down with injury. So if this unit can stay healthy with the combination of Blake Baker coming in, I think you can see a pretty significant jump from this unit heading into 2024. And if at the end of the day, Brian Kelly and Blake Baker don't see those jumps, I think this is another position that LSU probably goes to the transfer portal and addresses. Number 4, sticking on the defensive side of the football, you guys probably getting the MO that's where my question marks for this program is the edge rusher development. And I look back at that 2023 year and say, this was a unit that massively underperformed my expectations for this team, right? You look at a guy like Savion Jones, you haven't seen that step in the right direction. Deshaun Womack, I think, flashed why he was a 5-star, but wasn't consistent enough. I thought Braden Swinson played some damn good football for LSU. I look at, this edge rusher room and say, all right, Savion Jones, Braden Swinson, Deshaun Womack. These guys, it's a talented room. And I think what excites me the most is Blake Baker brings over Kevin Peoples to work with these edge rushers. Kevin Peoples did a phenomenal job at Missouri working with these edge rushers. So I guess that's a long way of saying what am I most excited for in terms of this edge rusher group is the development that you're going to see. The talent in my mind is not the question, right? Braden Swinson, Deshaun Womack, Savion Jones, they all have the capability of being good edge rushers. Can Kevin Peoples come in and unlock this talent is my question that I'm going to be paying attention to in spring practice. And I'll say this, if you start hearing some good things about a guy like Deshaun Womack or Savion Jones going up against guys like Will Campbell in practice, and they're sometimes getting the better of Will Campbell, you probably know that this edge rusher group is going to be pretty damn good in 2024 if they're getting after these LSU tackles that both guys going to be playing in the NFL. Last question I have, and I don't want to go the whole time not talking about this LSU offense. My focus in here is two things. One, that running back room. I think Caleb Jackson steps up and becomes that bell cow for this LSU team in 2024 at the running back spot. A little bit more of the wide receiver shakeout, right? Kyron Lacy, Chris Hilton, you bring in CJ Daniels. That's probably your starting three wide receivers. Oh, guys, CJ Daniels probably could be playing on Sundays had he wanted to go to the NFL draft. Chris Hilton Jr., Kyron Lacy, you saw some really good things from. They just didn't get enough opportunity because they were behind two of the best wide receivers in the country last year. And then two other guys that I want to give just a quick shout out. One, you have a lot of talent coming in from the freshman ranks. Aaron Anderson, Xavier Thomas, both guys I'm really excited for. Right, you look at this LSU wide receiver, and we talked about this a couple of days when we were talking about breakout candidates. This is an LSU offense that's predicated on space, right? Getting the football to their guys in space. It's an offense that because they work downfield so much, it creates a lot of space underneath. Which one of those two out of Savion Thomas coming from Mississippi State and Aaron Anderson are going to be the wide receivers that are kind of those space guys where we're going to try to get the football to, let them operate after the catch, because both of them, that is their expertise, right? Aaron Anderson coming out of high school was one of the best kick returners that we saw at the high school ranks. Xavier Thomas, another phenomenal special teamer, but a guy that flashed what he can do after the catch at Mississippi State as well. I am very interested to see which of those two wide receivers emerge as that weapon for LSU in 2025. Again, this offense, I don't have many question marks about. That's more just a fun question there. Really excited about this program. Really excited about the development you're going to see from the defensive side of the football with this LSU team. And again, a team we're going to be talking a lot about as spring practice plays out. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. A sincere thank you to the LSU fans. You guys have shown a ton of love. Can't thank y'all enough. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.